With me now is John Mooney from NJ Spotlight. He is their education writer, their founder and CEO, and that was a great transition because you're on the education beat and have been for decades here.
Not too many decades,
well,
but a couple at least.
What's the situation, depending on who wins tonight, as to what the outlook is for education in this state?
Well, there's a lot of issues facing New Jersey, certainly going forward in the next 8 years. It's been a pretty rough last decade under Governor Christie for a variety of reasons. A big issue is around funding, how much money is afforded these schools, largely through state aid and also local property taxes. And they both have very different approaches, Phil Murphy and Kim Guadagno. Phil Murphy has talked about fully funding the state's formula, another $1 billion or $2 billion, which would provide more funding to most districts, at least more state funding. Kim Guadagno has focused more on the property tax side, but actually in trying to rein those in and making it up in state funding. But she has made a big issue of property taxes in New Jersey, and that is a third of the state budget and 2/3 of your local budget and your local property tax. So those are very different paths to trying to get additional funding to school and some relief to taxpayers. But we also have issues around student testing in this state, big issue for a lot of folks, the park testing we now have. Kim Guadagno has said she would at least continue it as is, has not made a big issue of that. Phil Murphy has said he would end it immediately. I'm not quite sure what he would replace it with, if anything at all. I think there's a general consensus there has to be some kinds of assessments, and so he hasn't really fleshed out what would happen next, but he's been very vocal against the park test, and that gets him some points among those, especially teacher unions and some of the other advocacy groups.
Well, speaking of the teachers union, the NJEA, the teachers union, has been very involved, as they always are, politically, and there's a whole squabble going on with Steve Sweeney in South Jersey, the Senate president, who may or may not be reelected tonight. Just tell us what you can about that situation.
Yeah, I mean, NJEA is a very powerful, and New Jersey Education Association, very powerful, if not the most powerful union in the state, certainly public employee union, 200,000 members, you know, active, passionate members who care a lot about their local communities and their schools. So they can really bring a lot to bear to a race, and they have a lot of money, and they outpace virtually any other organization in the state in terms of what they spend on politics. And they have strongly gotten behind Phil Murphy, and they did so very early in the race and have really been backing him from the get-go and really helped him build the lead that a lot of folks feel he had, at least going into the race. They've gotten into this fight, however, with Senate President Steve Sweeney, also a Democrat, and not somebody you'd typically see a union pick a fight with. But he and they have disagreed on how to fund the state's pension system. And he at one point promised us to introduce a constitutional amendment to require the state to fully fund the pension system which is very near and dear to the union's heart, obviously, if maybe as big an issue as any, because it's really their members' paychecks and compensation. He vowed to do that constitutional amendment, then pulled back. They said he broke a promise. And that set off a firestorm of a fight between the two. And where they are now, the NJEA is now backing his Republican candidate, who is largely, a fan of President Trump, who is an anathema to the union otherwise. But
that's quite a tangled web you got there.
You play with their pension, and strange bedfellows get, emerge out of it. And it's been a while. It's the most expensive legislative race ever in this state, $20 million. I mean, this is huge bucks being spent on it, and to the point where Steve Sweeney, who should have coasted into this re-election, now has a fight on his hands.
Well, we'll keep an eye on that tonight,
we'll see.
along with your NJ Spotlight maps. Thanks for that too. And
yep.
Thanks for being with us.
I'm glad.
Appreciate
Thank
it
you
very much.